Section 1 of First Communion Days by Sister of Notre Dame. This recording is in the public domain. Recording by Maria Therese. Joseph. A Sister of Charity was one day visiting the family of a poor child attending the school of which she had the charge. In her hand she carried a basket of provisions, for the family were poor and in want. Up one street and down another trudged the good Sister. At last she came to a row of small shops, between two of which was a narrow passage leading into a small square court. Around this court were sheds or rooms, and in each of these dwelt a different family. As Sister Louise came out from the particular room she had come to visit, a woman standing in the doorway of the next one spoke to her. "Sister," she said, "will you take my Joseph into your school? He's gone 5, and the inspector's been around." As the Sister stopped at the open door she had a view of the entire room and family. It was poorer than any of you could imagine. Half the room was occupied by a large but broken down bed, the rest by a table and 2 boxes used for seats. The walls were hidden by various garments hanging from nails. The one small window was broken and had a piece of paper stuck over the hole. This was Joseph's home, where he slept and played and had his meals. The family were at that moment having their tea, the father seated on a box, the 3 children upon the bed. 2 cups without handles were provided for the father and mother, but the children shared a saucer between them. "Come here, Joey, and let Sister see you," said the mother. Joey slid carefully off the bed, placed the empty saucer on the table, and stood beside his mother, looking up at Sister Louise. His legs were bare, his little shirt and trousers ragged, dirty, and torn. His face was surrounded by a thick crop of rough yellow hair, making him look like a copy of shock-headed Peter. "He's a fine boy, is Joey," said the mother, looking with pride on her eldest son, while she tried to rub up his face with the corner of her apron. "He's that clever, there's nothing he can't do." "Has he been baptized?" asked Sister Louise. "Oh, yes. Father John baptized him along with Mrs. Moore's Tom." "Very well," said Sister Louise. "You may send him next Monday, but see that he is washed and tidy." So the following week Joseph began his school life. His face had been washed and his little shirt too. Otherwise he looked much the same as when Sister Louise had first made his acquaintance. Joseph thought school a wonderful place, something like heaven, he told his mother. It was warm, there was plenty of room to move about, pretty pictures hung on the wall, and, above all, there was music. Joseph loved music, and a lady actually played music while Joseph and the other children marched around the room. Dinner hour came all too quickly, and when afternoon school was over, he cried because he had to go home. His teachers became very pleased with him. He tried so hard at all his lessons that he was soon the first in his class. "If only he were clean and tidy," the teacher would say to Sister Louise, "we could do almost anything with him." Each morning as soon as he came into school, Joseph was sent to wash his face and hands, but he could not wash his clothes, which every day became more ragged and dirty. 2 or 3 times his sister had given him a coat or a jersey, but the next day he would come back without it, saying that his father had sold it, as he wanted money to pay for something to drink. It was the month of November. The children had been told about the poor souls in purgatory and taught to say some prayers for them. In the school hall, too, there was a box on the altar into which the children sometimes dropped a penny, for they were saving up to have a Mass said for the holy souls. Joseph had never had a penny to spend, but he had often watched the others drop one in and wished that he could do so too. About this time Joseph became the happy possessor of his first penny. It came about in this way. His hair had become by this time so rough and untidy that Sister Louise asked his mother to let her get it cut. Permission being readily given, Joseph, accompanied by a big girl, set off toward the barber's shop. It was a bitter cold day. A sharp east wind was blowing, and the people in the streets drew their furs closely around them. Joseph had no furs. He had not even a coat. But though he shivered with the cold, it never occurred to him to complain. The barber looked with pity at the boy's scanty clothing and at his pinched and hungry-looking little face. And when the big girl gave him the usual 3-pence charge, he took one of the pennies and placed it in the boy's hand, saying, "Here, laddie, go and buy yourself a bun or some sweeties." Joseph thanked him, and then with his penny safe in his hand, he trotted happily back to school. The door was just about to be locked, but Joseph slipped in and ran in great haste towards the altar. There, with a sigh of satisfaction, he dropped his penny into the box. Turning round, he saw the Sister near him. "The barber gave me the penny for sweeties," he said, "and I buyed a holy soul out of purgatory instead." 2 years went by. Joseph could read and write. He was, as his mother had said, a clever boy, but so ragged and dirty that he always looked the most uncared for in the whole school. But that did not worry Joseph. He loved his school, enjoyed all his lessons, especially his catechism, which taught him to love our Blessed Lord. About this time Joseph made his first confession, and then began to prepare for his first Holy Communion. The church was not far from the school, and every day Joseph would slip in on his way home, and sometimes remain for a long time, praying before the Blessed Sacrament. To do this he had each day to resist the temptation to play cards with the other boys on a neighboring doorstep. This was a favorite game at that time. The boys would play for sweets or nuts or even for money, and Joseph had often been the winner of these coveted prizes. But Sister did not like the game. She told them it was a dangerous one for little boys and often led to sin later on. So Joseph had decided that in preparing for his first Holy Communion he would give up playing and pay a visit to our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament instead. Although Joseph's father and mother never went to Mass themselves, they had not quite lost their faith and were quite willing that their children should go. Every Sunday Joseph would get up, help to dress his younger brother and sister, and take them to the children's Mass. There he would kneel so still and join so reverently in the prayers and hymns that our Lord must have loved him very much. When the day of his first Holy Communion arrived, Sister told him that although it was into his soul that Jesus was coming, still out of respect for him, his God, he should make himself as clean and tidy as was in his power. This he did, and Sister lent him a large jersey and some shoes and socks, which made him look quite respectable. "Jesus will hardly know me," he said, looking at himself with great satisfaction. After this Joseph went to Holy Communion every day. He would take a crust of bread in his pocket for breakfast and eat it on his way to school from the church. One day the school doctor came to examine the children. When Joseph came in and the doctor noticed his thin, stunted little body and his ragged garments, he turned to the Sister, saying, "What a wretched, miserable little object!" Joseph heard, and his face flushed. When the doctor had gone, he said, "Sister, our Lord didn't call me a wretched, miserable little object when I went to Holy Communion this morning, did He?" "No, indeed," replied Sister. "When Jesus saw you coming into church this morning, He said, 'Here is my little Joseph. How I love to come into his faithful little heart.'" Joseph's face flushed with pleasure at these words. Looking up into Sister's face, he said, "I will always be his faithful little Joseph." And Sister felt sure that he would. End of section 1.